Hello everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio. Today I'm sharing with you the art canvas that I started on Art Joy of Sharing live stream today. This is Thursday, the 27th of February. And we were talking about building blocks, steps to take to build up a mixed media piece. And so I started with some white gesso on a Canva board. These are kind of designed for plein air painting. They come in a pack of like a tablet, and there's, I think, I don't know, 10 of them in there. But it's basically a board that has a textured heavy paper over it. It's kind of like cardboard or tag board with heavy paper canvas print, like textured paper over the top. So after I put my layer of gesso on and dried it, then I started out in a way that is easy to start something. If you have a blank canvas in front of you or a blank art journal page or something, you can always just add some color. And that will get you started. That will get you a place to start. So I used some Dina Wakley heavy body paints and an old gift card and just scraped some different colors on there, trying to go from a darker to a lighter and from a cool to a warm from the diagonal corners. Then the next step that I decided to do is collage. You know, that's my favorite. And so often my mixed media will have a layer of collage before anything else. Sometimes I start with the collage, sometimes I start with something else, maybe some stenciling or some paint scraping, or I mean, there's just so many options. You could start with ink, you could start with dripping, texturing, with stencils, all kinds of things. But the idea is to just get started, get that thing, that white thing, having something on it. In mixed media, it's about layering, adding and layering and texturing and adding more. And so what you start with is not what you finish with. It's not like you're making an oil painting or a acrylic painting where you have to be mindful of exactly what you're doing in that, you know, the shapes and the colors in certain areas. This is more, I want a color, I want a color way. I want a combination, and I'm gonna start with the paint, and then I'm gonna continue those same colors and areas of color with the painty papers that I'm collaging on. But I'm not yet concerned about what my focal point is. In fact, I don't even know. I just know that I'm creating an interesting and colorful background that I will use for something. Our idea on the live show today was to show different ways of getting started. The building blocks, the foundation of mixed media is what we were doing. And so my intention wasn't necessarily to finish a piece. And in fact, I didn't finish it. I finished it later after the show was over. So I'm grabbing different pieces of painty papers, stenciled papers, gel printed papers, ephemera papers like music paper and stuff like that. Just whatever. Trying to keep with the colors in the general area that I started with the paint. So I've got kind of darker blues down in the lower corner, then some greens and turquoises, and then moving to yellows and a little bit of orange and pink type colors. So I'm staying with that, trying to go dark to light in a diagonal, trying to go cool to warm in a diagonal. Um, this layer isn't intended to be the end all be all. There will be more stuff added and more layers added. So if it's not a beautiful work of art, it is what I want it to be. It's colorful, it's got a lot of colors, and it's going from that dark to light and cool to warm in a diagonal. That's all I care about. And I could really do this portion all day long. And in fact, I could stop with the collage part and be perfectly happy. This one, maybe not so much. I wasn't considering composition or, you know, the roll of threes or anything like that. I was more considering the colors that I was adding. But I did definitely want to add some texture and some shape and some pattern. So I didn't cover up every single teeny tiny bit of the paint in the background. There's still some peeking through. once I'm finished with the collage. But you know, it's mostly covered up. I just love gluing paper to stuff. This is my favorite. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the feel of it. I don't know if it's the. I just don't know. I just love it. So then I have this little container of leftover letters from things, and I decided to add a few of those because they have an interesting graphic quality. There's some of them cut from magazines, some of them are leftover die cuts. I have a couple dies that have the entire alphabet, upper and lower, on it all at once. So when you're cutting out a word, you cut the whole thing, and then you have all these leftovers. So I added a few of those just for fun and interest. Then my next layer, my third layer, is to add a little bit of stenciling, kind of integrating the shapes from the stencils to help all the different collage pieces to integrate with each other. So I'm using the same colors that I used of paint in the background, night and emerald and those type of colors from Dina Wakley. That one's called Blushing. It's like a pinky color, skin tone kind of color. And I think I used Lemon, which is the yellow that I used in the background. It's a nice bright yellow. These stencils are from Stencil Girl, and I think the ones I used actually ended up being all from the same. No, maybe not. The ones that are in long strips, they were all one stencil at some point, and then I cut them up into sections to use as smaller stencils because it makes them easier to use. So now I'm pretty happy with all my layers, and I want to do a focal image. And I decide to do a bird because it's spring and there's birds out. Well, at least it's spring for me. It's warm. There's lots of birds. And in this morning, I actually was looking out my window and in the studio, looking out to my backyard, and I saw a roadrunner, which I mean, I've seen them before. It's not the first time I've seen one, but I don't see a lot of them. It's not a frequent thing that I see, but he was actually out there. They're strange birds. They eat roadkill, basically. They're carrion eaters. And so they don't really have a reason to come to my backyard because there's not any meat back there. There's nothing, to chew on. So I don't see them very often. But if you did want to attract a roadrunner, you could by chopping up meat and leaving it in the backyard or wherever, and you'd see them more often. But I guess it needed a drink of water or something. I don't know. Anyway, it was back there. And I was like, oh, at first I thought it was a young bird of prey because sometimes I get, falcons and things. But the way it looked, it was scruffy looking. I thought it was a young one. But then when it turned its face, I realized it was a roadrunner. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So now I'm doing something that I call exclusion painting, but I think other people call it reverse painting, maybe, or something like that. Um, I'm I'm painting the background around my drawing. I drew some branches and things. I drew a bird, and I'm painting the background using cobalt teal and quinacridone gold and a little bit of white gesso. I don't want to completely cover the interesting pattern in the background. I want that to stay. I spent all that time doing all those layers. I don't want everything to be disappeared, but I do want it to be pushed back. So anywhere where there's not part of my drawing, I'm putting these colors on, and then maybe getting a little bit of water on my brush and making them a little bit thinner, or else I do also have a baby wipe and I'm kind of taking color back with it as well. And then now I'm going to make my focal image stand out. So I'm using this, it's called a Pentel Pocket brush. It's got a brush and then there's little replacement cartridges for the ink. But basically what it is India ink, which is a permanent type of ink. And then the brush is a synthetic brush, so it makes it easy to put on. And then if you get to it before it's dry, you can blend it out with water. So I'm using a water tank brush and just doing like a little section at a time and then blending it out in kind of a watery way, and then maybe tapping it back a little bit to make sure there's not puddles. And this is a way for me to make that foreground of all the bright colors in collage and stenciling stand out from the background. So this is a fun thing for me to do. I like doing this a lot. And this is bringing my illustration out. And that's basically where the live stream ended. So it's still a work in progress. But I turned back on the camera later and continued doing what I was doing, which is basically doing all the lines, making the illustration come out from the background with the India ink in a Pentel pocket brush. Underneath the video in the show more area down there below the video, there will be a list of products I used and links. So if you're interested in the Pentel pocket brush with India ink in it, you can look down there and there'll be a link to Amazon probably for the little pocket brush so you can see what it is. You can use that link. And if you do use that link, then that link takes you to Amazon, the American version, and I will get a tiny percentage of a cent if you buy that brush using my links. It's one way to support my channel by using my links. I have links to Amazon and also links to Arteza sometimes, which is another affiliate program that I belong to. Helps me out a little bit, helps me get more supplies to use on my channel. So I always am appreciative when people use my links. That's the reason I do them, and also they're helpful so that if you don't understand what I'm saying something is, that you will be able to see it in written or typed form so that you can understand what it is. So I'm almost finished with all my black, blended black lines, and I'm just filling in a few inside the bird, his toes, his little claws. You want to be able to see that he's gripping the branch. And then what is the next thing I do? I can't remember. Oh yeah, I decided to do some more stenciling. I thought it'd be interesting to have a vertical and horizontal, just kind of a background line just for interest. I don't know why I thought that would be interesting, but I decided to use those same stencils again, the ones that have been cut apart from a 9x12 into smaller pieces. I used the rectangle one and then in white gesso, and then the circular one, I put a line of circles right down next to it in black acrylic ink. I just like the way it looks. I don't know why. And then I used some of that quinacridone gold with a smaller square stencil to just go over down at the bottom, the branches. There's a large branch that he's standing on, but then there's smaller branches woven around, and they looked all the same. There wasn't enough delineation between the two. So I used that smaller squares and the quinacridone gold to just go over the larger branch so that you can see it separate from the smaller branch that's kind of going parallel to it. Then I decided to add a little bit more collage, and I cut out this crown, this like crown of twigs. He might be the king of the forest. I don't know. I just thought it would be cool to put a crown on there. And so I cut it out of dictionary paper. So it has a little bit of text on it, makes it interesting. And I cut out some extra branches to add because it got too complicated to cut everything out at once. So I just added them later to add more branches to the crown. It's like some twigs and branches, little tiny ones twisted together. And then I'm adding some more collage over the wing and the tail kind of adding directionality so that it looks more like feathers. I'm tearing them in a feather shape and then adding them, not covering the entire thing, but just some of it to make it look a little bit more like feathers and to add more colors. That central section, there was some pretty large blocks of color, and I wanted there to be more color variation. So that's what I'm doing, is just tearing some more papers and adding them. Still using the Liquitex matte gel medium, which is my favorite collage medium. Hands down, I love this stuff the best. I always buy it. I should buy it by the gallon. I always say that and then I never do. I usually sometimes I buy the 8 ounce, sometimes I buy the 16 ounce containers. But so when my collage is about done, I need to go back and do some more delineation of the lines, the illustration up by the crown, using my Pentel pocket brush and my Arteza water tank brush again to make that crown of twigs stand out more from the background. So I'm adding the shadows around it like I did before with all the other lines. Same old thing. If you're enjoying this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment or question below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have subscribed, please turn on your notification bells. And you can also share this on Pinterest or Facebook if you think someone would be interested in this process. I decided that the beak needed some collage as well. I just didn't like it, so I added a piece of torn paper to that. And then just still working on the lines to make sure everything is the way I want it. So I also have a white Posca pen. A Posca pen is an acrylic paint pen. There's acrylic paint inside there. And I'm using it, I'm kind of extending the twigs and branches with the white pen just to make some of the lines look more fine. You know, it's hard to cut out little things like that. So I'm doing that. I'm also adding highlights in certain places and then blending it out with my water tank brush. You can do that with the Posca pen. It stays, wet for a really short amount of time, but you can blend it out with water. And then once it's dry, it's permanent. So everything I've used on here today might be alterable by water, but it's all permanent when dry. So there's really no need for me to seal this, although I probably will spray it with a coat of matte sealer outside. Always do that outside. It's too stinky to do it inside. It's not good for you to breathe that stuff. Just to make it kind of all uniform, I guess. I don't need to, but I probably will, just to seal it up and make it more professional. I could probably sell this one if I wanted to. I kind of like it though. I might want to keep it. I don't know. So then I decided that the bird needed a heart shape on its chest, just because I like heart shapes. So I tore one out of some painted red and orangey colored paper, adding some more highlights with the white Posca pen and blending them with my water brush. Still trying to get that branch at the bottom to stand out more from the other branch, which is behind it. Then I decided what I really needed was some more branches. So I decided to make some little ghost branches using my white Posca pen and blending it to draw the lines. And there was one there that just kind of ended abruptly because it just happens sometimes when you're drawing over all the bright colors, it's hard to see. And then I did go over these with a little bit of watered down gesso with the same water brush. And after the camera was off, I did add a little bit of shading around them as well. Not as intense, but I just felt like I needed a few more lines. And the last thing I did before I turned the camera off was to give the bird some bright pink cheeks. So here's your close-ups. That's it for me. Thanks. Bye-bye.